Hello there. Today we're going to look at how to set up a VLAN. So what I've done, I've created a small mini network. So I've got my router here, which is an 1841, and my switch. I've also got two computers, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. So this computer's on VLAN 2 and this computer's on VLAN 3. If you notice, they're totally different IP addresses. So this is network 192.168.1 and VLAN 2 is 192.168.0. So completely different networks. So the first thing we have to do is set up our VLAN within our switch, because VLANs are set up via the switch. So I click on the switch, I go to the command line, and here I'm at the command line, so I'll press enter, and I'm at the first level of the menu system. Remember, the deeper you go within the menu system, the more control you have. So the first command I'll type is enable. And now I'll type config terminal. Enter. So now I need to go to the actual port. So on this computer here, the port I'm plugged into is port 1. So to get to port 1, I type int, short for interface, and then the port number, FA0/1. Now in port 1. Now I need to configure this port as an access port. Access ports, when it comes to VLANs, are ports which you plug computers, printers, and other hosts into. So to do that, I type switch port mode access, and then I press enter. Now, in order to assign that port to VLAN 2, I type switch port access VLAN 2, because we want it assigned to VLAN 2. You'll notice, because VLAN 2 doesn't exist, it creates it. And now port 1 is assigned to VLAN 2. If there are other computers plugged into the various other ports, I would do the same for each of those ports to assign them to VLAN 2. Now we need to assign the other computer, this one here, to VLAN 3. So it's the same principle again. So I need to now go into port 2. So I type int FA 0/2. And I need to make that a switch port mode access or access port. So I type switch port mode access. And then I assign it to VLAN 3. Again, because VLAN 3 didn't exist, it creates VLAN 3. Just to let you know, by default, all ports on a switch are at VLAN 1, and that's their default VLAN setting. So all ports on a switch are at VLAN 1. Okay, now the cable that goes from our switch to our router, remember what we're doing here is setting up a VLAN using something called router on a stick. And the reason for that is because if you think of it, it looks like a stick holding up a router. Router on a stick basically allows one cable to take all the VLAN traffic to that one port on the router, thereby saving ports on the router. So if you're limited with router ports, router on a stick is a good way of saving those ports by just using one for all your VLAN connections. So to do this, I need now to go into port 3. So again, int fa 0/3. So I'm now in port 3, and I need to make this something called a trunk port. A trunk port carries VLAN information. Now, this trunk port could be connected to a router or a switch. In this case, it's a router. So to make a trunk port, I type switch port, mode, trunk. That's it. I've now configured port 1 here to VLAN 2, port 2 here to VLAN 3, and port 3 here to our trunk port, which will carry all the VLAN information to the actual router. So what I'll do, I'm just going to exit this now. So I'm going back up from the menu system. Of course, I would save the configuration file to the switch in case I turn the switch off and then turn it back on again, but I'm not going to do that. But just beware, you would normally save it to the actual configuration file in the switch. So we can close this down now and access our router. Again, command line. Now, it says here, would we like to enter the initial configuration dialog? It says yes or no. We'll just put no. Enter. Enter again. Again, the router has this 3-layer menu system, so we need to go to the bottom layer because that's where we got all the configuration. So enable and config terminal. Now we need to access a port. So the cable goes into port FA0/0. So to get into the interface is int, which stands for interface, FA0/0. Press enter. Now, by default, the ports on a router are shut down, closed. We need to open that port. So what we do, we type no shutdown. Enter. And you can actually see the port now becomes open, or what they call up. Now, because we're feeding 2 lots of VLANs up this one piece of cable, we need to divide that port into subports, and now subports will become 0/0.1 and 0/0.2. So 0.1 will be for VLAN 2 and 0.2 will be for VLAN 3. So to do that, we need to go into that. So we go int again, FA 0/0.1. So we divide that port up. Press enter. Yeah. And again, because that subport has been closed down, it opens up. Now the next thing we need to do is something called encapsulation. This uses a protocol called 802.1q. And what this protocol does, it tags the VLANs, or the different VLANs. So as data travels up that cable, the router can identify through this protocol which data belongs to VLAN 2 and which data belongs to VLAN 3. So the command for initiating that protocol is encapsulation. And then dot q. And then type a number 2 after it. That 2 refers to VLAN 2, because VLAN 2 is going to arrive at that router on port 0/0.1. Press enter. Yep. So that looks good. Now we need to assign the IP address to it. And what we do, we assign the gateway IP address for VLAN 2, which is IP address 192.168.0.10. And it's mask 255.255.255.0. Center. So that is port 0/0.1 setup for VLAN 2. And now we need to do the same thing for VLAN 3. So we need to split the port again. So int FA 0/0.2 and active and encapsulation. So we need to assign the protocol. Encapsulation dot Q, and because we're assigning port 0.2 to VLAN 3, we put a 3 at the end. Press enter. Now we need to give it an IP address, which is the default gateway for VLAN 3. IP address 192.168.1.10, and subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Center. Yep, all looking good. And then we exit. At this stage, we would save the configuration file. So if the router restarted, it would be there. And exit all the way to the top. Okay, close that down. So now VLAN 2, or the computer on VLAN 2, should be able to talk to the computer on VLAN 3. So to prove that, we can click on this simple PDU, which is like a ping. Click on that computer there. Click on this computer here. And if we look down here, it's failed at the moment. So I'll just delete that. So you've got to remember, routers and switches work as if they're the real thing in the real world. So they do take a good few seconds or half a minute to configure themselves and up and running. So let's try again. Yep, successful. And the other way, successful. So now we got VLAN 2 talking to VLAN 3. And that's it. Thanks so much for your time.